So now let us try with another approach to load the Excel file. I just right click on the sales database and you will find the task icon here, right? The menu here. In the tasks menu, you will find import data. Click on the import data. Here you need to specify the source from which file you wanted to load the data inside your sales database. So we wanted to load the data from the Excel file into the sales database of my SQL server. So my source is Microsoft SQL. Look here, sorry, the Excel, Microsoft Excel. If I come here, I just go to that one, and if you see here NC sales, I look here, this is my XLSX file, the extension is XLSX. I store this one, I just open it now, because when I try to load the data from this Excel file, with which is the latest version file here, okay, latest version of Excel here. So the file name extension is XLSX. So with this it is not working fine. So there is some the connector issue. So what we will do is to overcome that, click on file and save as and browse. Instead of storing it as XLSX file, just click on this and store it as, you save it as .xls file, the older version, so that it'll have some kind of backward compatibility, everything. You can open the XLS file from your latest version of Excel, and also this XLS related, one second, let me just recreate it one more time. So now this file got saved as .xls file. I just go ahead here and see. Okay, here what we can do is we need to select that XLS file instead of selecting the .xlsx file. Look here, we have two files here, right? So I'm going to select nc sales.xls files. From here I just repeat it one more time. So this is the folder where I kept all the data files. So nc sales.xls file. Okay, I just selected. Okay, for you I showed you here that one. So ideally what you do, the file which I uploaded in the GitHub. Okay, this is my GitHub link. I shared it with you all. Here if you scroll down, once you go to this URL and if you press enter, it will bring up page something like this, and if you scroll down little bit, you will find nc sales latest.zip. And ideally what you do is you can use Ctrl F and search it out. Instead of scrolling down, NC sales, you will find three files, starts with NC sales. You need to download this latest one. So in my case, I downloaded this under new folder. I create a separate folder by the name of sales data. In the that one also, I think not here. Here, sales data, right? So I created here, so you can download it here. And see, look here, it's already I downloaded it. It is there, and I unzipped it. After unzipping it, you will find all the XLS file. Now I just open the ncsales.xlx file and I saved it as ncsales.xls. Okay, I just open this one here. Good. Click on next. But if you look here, it automatically picks up the version of this one. Okay. And when you click on, or the other option is, let us try with different connector. Let me just try the NC product, not this one. XLX, and yeah. So when you select the latest version of the XLS file with the .xlsx, it automatically picks up the corresponding thing here, the corresponding connector. So when you click on this, you are getting some error, something wrong with this. Instead of wasting time here, let us go and convert the .xls file. Okay, so this one, this file version is, this Excel file version is this one, and click on next, and the destination. Now it asks us from in which destination I need to load this data. So we just mentioned the source as Excel file, And also we have given the Excel file path and the Excel file name, everything previously here, right? So we have mentioned it very clearly here, and when you click on the next, it will ask you where this file data should get loaded. So I want this data should get loaded into my SQL server. So you need to scroll down. When you scroll down at the bottom, right, so you will find SQL Server native client. Click on this. Sorry, click on this. That's it. Okay, you don't have to change anything else here. Since we have created only one database here, it shows by default sales database. In case you have more than one database, for example, if you click on this drop down list here, you'll find master model, MSDB, TempDB. These are all system related database. We are not supposed to create the tables under these system tables. Instead, you can select sales. This is the database we created it. So in this database, I want this Excel file data should get loaded here. Okay, click on next. Here we have two options: copy data from one or more tables or views. So you can go by this default option. Okay, you don't make any changes here. Click on next, and then you can see two different tables here. As part of these Excel files, there are it shows two different sheets. So you click on the first one and then click on preview to check whether this sheet has for data in it. Yes, it has data in it, and you can simply click on next. But before that, you can click on edit mappings also. You just check here, and you have some option called edit SQL. So you can, if you don't want some columns, you can remove it here. So while you import the data from your Excel to your SQL Server database, if you think certain columns are not required for you, then you can delete it. Okay, so anyhow, in our case, we are not going to do anything. Simply we go by the the default settings, and then we will go ahead and import it and click on next. Run immediately. Finish. I just go and say finish. It will take for a while. In my case, 92 rows got transferred. If you see any warning message error under the status tab, then you need to take a look at that. Right? So you need to go and check why the error. So it will show, in case of error, it will display the error message, and you need to troubleshoot it. But in our case, it got loaded successfully. So 92 rows. So this is the way we can make sure that the data has been fully loaded or not, correctly loaded or not. With this, we should be able to understand. Okay. So next, I just go and close it, and then I'll just go to the SQL Server, and then under sales database. In this sales database, we have imported the Excel data here. So, but the table is not visible. You need to click on this refresh button. When you click on the refresh, and if you expand the tables folder, you will find the NC sales here. Just click over here and right click on this table and rename it as, give some meaningful name, sales fact, something like that, sales fact. Okay, so if you want to see the columns that are part of this table, you just click on this plus icon to expand it. So a lot of options are available here. So under columns, you will find the columns that are part of this table. You can find it here, and when you right click on it, you have an option called select top 1000 rows. You just click on it. Look here, it selects top 1000 records from the sales fact table, but in the sales fact table we have only 92 records, hence 1000. This is the default value here. You can by making changes to this default value, you can for example, in this case I just specify 10, that which means out of 92 records, display only the first 10 records or top 10 records. Once you so now we need to execute this one because we made some changes here. You select this one and click on execute. Look here, it shows only 10 records. It is always a best practice, select the top 10 records, top 50 records, top 100 records. In the real-time scenario, you must be having millions of records and tables. In that kind of situations, if you use select star or something like it will take select star. I think in this version is also available in MySQL server. Sorry, not MySQL server, SQL server. Okay, select star from, you can directly give like the sales fact. So you need to sales fact, select it, press F5. Either you can press F5, sorry, select this query alone. I selected only this query and pressed F5 to execute this one. Alternatively, you can click on execute. Okay, so this query got executed. You can see the query's output here. Okay, so here this is for displaying the results of the queries whatever you executed, right, or whatever the queries that you write it here and you execute it, right. So you can see the output here, and in this data window you can see the two tabs here, results and messages. When you click on messages, it shows completion time, how long it took to execute the query, and then or how long it took to retrieve the entire 92 records from this table. So this gives you the message. Okay, this gives you some kind of information. Okay, how many number of records loaded into this table, or how many number of records are there, and how much time it took to display or fetch the records from your table sales fact table. Look here. So but when I used star here, it selected all the columns and all the records from the sales fact table. If you look at the right bottom corner here, you will find 92 rows here. So I meant this one. If you look at the right bottom here, you will find 92 rows. That means when you use select star from a table, not only sales fact table, if you use any table name here, it will display all the columns and all the records that are part of this table. So in this sales fact table, we have 92 records are there. So that is what we are seeing it here. And if you scroll down here on the, just by dragging this down, you can find all the records till the end. You can see that. But this is not a good practice using select star. If you have a table which has less number of records, then you can go for select star. It is not the best practice. Instead, what you do is you can select top 1000 records, top 100 records, because in the real-time scenario, we'll be dealing with millions and millions of records. So there are some tables you will have 25 million records. In some cases, you have 45 million, 75 million records will be there. In that case, if you simply execute this kind of query, right, select star from there, it will unnecessarily fetch the 25 million records or 50 million records. So retrieving the huge volume of the data will consume a lot of memory in the system. So even in the case of development environment, they loaded a huge volume of data. So in that case, if you use select star from query, so it will try to load 25 million records into memory, and it has to read the data from the disk, and then it has to load it in the memory. There is an IO, input and output. Okay, so there is too much of IO, and memory consumption will be more. And like you, in a development project, so 5 or 6 people, if they execute a query something like this, select star from table, it'll consume too much of memory, and so to overcome that, what you do is you just view top 10 under records or top 100 records, or you can view top 150 records, 200 records, to understand the what data, to understand or to familiarize with the data. You can just use 100 or 10 records or 20 records, something like that. Okay, so in this case, I just okay, it executed these two queries. Okay, we don't need the select star from. Anyhow, I just comment it out here, select. So how do we specify comments in the SSMS or SQL server? Use the / followed by that you need to specify star, and here select all the values, or select entire data and display. So we use this forward slash and star to specify multi-line comment. Okay, so once you complete your comment, right, at the end of it you need to close this comment. Okay, so here you started with forward slash and star, and then here you need to put star. It's an opposite of this one. First you need to put a star, followed by this you need to specify the forward slash. That means when you when you execute this line, the SQL engine, the SQL server engine, when it comes here, right, so when it the SQL engine, it reads line by line and execute the statements one after other. So in this case, when it comes here, the moment when it sees the forward slash star, it will understand, okay, this is a multi-line command. So it will it'll simply ignore this line, it will not execute it, and then it comes to the next line and say, okay, this comment ends here, star and further. So from here to here I need to ignore it. I'm not supposed to execute this one because it is a comment. So the comment, using the comment in the code is a best practice, because the business uses later point in time, if they wanted to understand what logic that you have used in your query, if you specify the comment, it will help them to understand it. So you might be good in SQL. You are good in SQL because you are a developer, writing SQL query. So in the case of complex SQL queries, it involves a lot of business logic. You would have used complex business logic in your SQL query. But for the business user to understand the logic what you implemented, you can brief it as part of this comment. So in the case of in some cases the comments will run for more than one line. So that is called multi-line comment. Supposing if you want to specify single line comment, use double hash and select all the values from sales fact table. So this is single line comment. You can specify the single line comment prefixed with double hyphen. So in this case, when you execute this query, still the query will get executed, but the though it has the comment along with this, it will get executed. But what will happen is the SQL Server engine, it will read till this. The moment when it encounters the double hash, it will simply ignore whatever you mentioned it here, right? Since you prefixed with double hash, that means it will not execute it. The SQL Server engine will think, it will understand, oh, this is a comment, single line comment, this is a multi-line comment. So wherever the comments are there, I'm not supposed to execute it. So until T, right? So sales fact T here, until this there are no comments, hence it will execute this command. Look here, but it is not a good practice. Always use top 10, top 20, top 30, or top 100, 200. That is enough, okay, to familiarize with the data, right? Look here, by looking at this, you are able to see the customer ID. They mentioned C001. The customer ID is a alphanumeric value. What is alphanumeric value? The alphabet, it's a combination of alphabet, word, and the numeric value. So location keys, BL or order number, order date, so everything is there. So now, okay, so now you got a fair amount of idea about how to import the data from Excel file into the SQL server. The SQL server, this is my SQL server. On the SQL server, I can create multiple databases. See, in this case, I've created a sales database. Likewise, SCM, supply chain management database. And if you want to create, you can create one more database also. Or a single SQL server can have any number of databases, and each database can have any number of tables. So next, what we will do is we will import another Excel files data into the sales database. In the sales database, hence I wanted to import the Excel file, another data into Excel data sales database. Click on the sales database and right click on it. Sorry, or you just place the cursor over here and right click on it, and then go to tasks, and then if you scroll down here, import data. If you click on import data, it will take some time to open this import wizard, and from where you wanted to extract the data. Currently my data in Excel file, and just browse here If you go here, you can see that NC says XLS file. We have only in the sales data, we have all the Excel, but it's all XLX file. Yeah, category. This category Excel files extension, if you see, is XLS. So I just opened this file, like how I opened the ncsales.xlsx, and I clicked on save as. While saving it, I mentioned the extension as a .xls, or simply I selected the file type as 97-2003. So this is how the XLS, the older version of the Excel file got created. So just click on it and open it. Look here, nc.xls, and the corresponding Excel version also automatically displays here, and click on. So now from this file, load the data into my sales database. This is my sales database, right? In the sales database, you need to load this Excel file data into here. So that is what I am saying here. Okay, so from here to here, you need to load the data here. All right. Now you click on next. Now you need to tell the destination very clearly. Click on here, the drop down list, and then you scroll down from Excel to SQL Server. Use this connector to load the data here. So you don't have to make any changes. By default it shows sales. Supposing you wanted to load this file, Excel file data into other database, for example I have SCM, you can select the database. Whichever database you wanted to load the Excel file data, right? You need to select the appropriate database. So in our case, we wanted to load this Excel file nc category.xls also into my sales database. I selected sales and click on next. Click on next, and then you just select. See, it will show something like this. You just select this one, and make sure that whatever you are selecting it has data in it. Yes, the data is there. In this case, we have less number of data is there. Fine. So next I just click on this one, finish. 5 rows got transferred. So I don't see any error or warning message here. That means the category table got loaded successfully. To see here, you need to come here, and in the sales database, if you expand it, we don't see the file which imported it. As usual, you click on the refresh to see the recently imported table. You need to refresh it. Okay, when you refresh it, you will find. So look here, this is sales data. It shows sales data wrongly. It is not sales data. This is, I call this a dimension category. And then I just want to view the data that are part. So look here, it is that much simple. If you want to view the data from this table, select top 1000 rows. It automatically generates the query on our behalf. We don't have to write queries like select top. We don't have to write this one explicitly. Just right click on it and select. Just by doing point and click, we are able to generate the query, right? So the queries are generated automatically by the SSMS. So I can see the output for this one here. And if you notice here, so the 3 different tabs are opened here. This is the one we first used it, right? Initially we used it, sales fact, all the things, and this is my recently imported data. Okay, the table, recently created table. I just copy and paste in a single SQL file so that we can refer it back. Okay, and if I specify something like let's say if I say go here, and if I copy this and I just put it just above the go, so what happens here is, so what does this go do? So what happens is when you use go followed by these two, so these two queries are part of a single batch, which means these two queries will be sent together to the SQL engine to execute these two queries in a single batch. So you select this one, and then if you click on execute, you can find the data for both the category dimension table as well as the sales fact table in the single data window. Look here. So this is how you can compare data from one table to another table in the SSMS. It's pretty simple. Side by side you can compare. So category ID C001, you can see this customer purchased under products under beverages. Okay, since you have used batch here, go, you put the go after these two SQL queries. These two queries output, you can see it in this single data window, one after another. You can see it here. So this is the way, right? For testing purpose, is very much helpful. You can compare sideways whether whatever the data is there, correctly it is assigned here or something like that. Okay. So hope you understood how to import the data from your Excel file into SQL Server database. So in our case, we created a database by the name of sales. In the sales database, we have imported two Excel files. One is the sales related data, other one is category related data. And after we import this, we have renamed it. We have given the proper name to rename these two files. So this is called sales file, this is called dim category. Right, okay. Okay, so far we have seen how to import the data from Excel to SQL Server database. Now let us take a look at how to create a table from the SSMS itself. Instead of importing it from the Excel file, is there any way I can create it explicitly? For example, to create a table inside the SSMS, you just select tables folder. This tables folder is available as part of a sales database, and just place the cursor over here and right click it, select new table. So look here, it'll ask us to enter the column name and the data type, all the things. I just start with giving some employee ID. Column name is employee ID, and here I just say nchar 10. Okay, the width of the employee ID column, how much values I can store it in employee ID. So 10 character we can store it here. Okay, and allow nulls. Okay, let it be there. Okay, and I just, which means can I have blank values in the employee ID? For the time being, we will leave it as it is. And the next one is employee name. Employee name, not all the employees name will be, the width will be 10. So what we will do is we'll specify probably, let's say 30 the width. Some employees name will be lengthy, some employees name will be very small. So in this case, what I'm going to do is, employee ID is supposed to be not null. You are not supposed to have any blank values, and even for employee name, you're not supposed to have any blank values, which means, when you uncheck it, don't allow any blank value in this one. It should have value in it. The next one is the employee date of birth. This is the date data type. This is the date data type. You are saying the date, allow else. It can have blank values. In that case, you can leave it as it is. And then date of birth, and probably we can say we will use something else. Let me just check. We have another salary. The salary we can. The next one is when you click on to the next line. Here you can create another column, salary. Salary is a decimal data type, 10,2. So anyhow, we'll discuss about the data type right after this, just for you to give you the flavor or give you a quick sense of how to import the data from Excel file to SQL Server database, and how to create a table as part of SSMS itself. Right. So now we have specified decimal 10, so what is this 10,2? So what it says is, what we are saying is, the total number of digits should be allowed as 10. Of the 10 digits, 2 digits should be reserved for decimal values, to store the decimal values. For example, let's say if I say decimal 10,2, so total number of digits are 10. Okay, let's say 6, 3, 5, 4, 2, 3, 1. So total number of digits if you compute it. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, right? Total digits are 10, but of the 10 digits, 2 digits are reserved for decimal. So that is what it says, okay? So now I just go and give the table name. So now we created all the column name and the corresponding data type. There is no option here to specify the table name before you specify the column name, everything. So if you want to specify the table name, you just click on the cross here, or you can simply use Ctrl plus F4. Instead, I just click on this cross here, and then I say save changes to the following items. In my case, I don't want to save this one. Oh, sorry, if you don't save this, it will not get created, right? So the employee, yeah, sorry. Let me just, it will not get created. So you need to save it if you want it. So obviously we need to save this. You just click on this one and click on yes. It will ask you for the table name. So in this case, I say EMP. EMP is the table name. So you can give whatever the table name that you want to specify it. But every company, they follow their own naming convention as per the coding standard document or the naming convention document, which they share it as part of a development project. You need to follow the naming convention as per the document. If they say employee, you can specify employee, or if they say dim employee, dimension employee, all the the master table should prefix with a dim, okay, because it's a star schema model, something like that. Don't worry, we'll discuss about star schema later, okay. So the table name, in that case, as per the naming convention or the coding standard given by mentioned in the document, right? So I just prefixed this table name by dim employee, dimension employee. Click on OK, and if you refresh it on the left side, you will find a dim employee. This is the table we created it. So now the question is, now we created the table, and if I select, if you want to view the number of records that are part of this table, since we did not insert any data here, we just created the table, isn't it? We did not insert any data here. So to insert the data, just right click on it and you just select script table as here, and if you come down here, insert to, and you just click on this new query editor window and wait for some time, it will generate an insert script. Look here, insert into dim employee values, right? So here whatever things are specified, insert this less than and greater than sign. You need to replace it with the actual value. For example, the employee ID is 1001, and the employee name, here you specify the employee name, something like John, and then if you go down here and if you specify here the date of birth, whose date of birth is, let's say 3 and let's say 1998, I just go and say something like that, and the salary is, see, whatever the less than and greater than sign, right, between this, whatever the value is, right, including the less than and greater than sign, you need to replace it with the values, the salary. So in this case, the last one is salary. This is the for employee ID, we mentioned the value here. This is the column name, and employee name is the column name. What value it should go here? John. So date of birth, we specify the date of birth here, and here I just specify the salary as let's say 0.23 something like that. This is what is salary. Since it is a data type, the 3rd March 1998 is the date of birth, and if I say comma here, and if I select all these things, and if I click on execute, let us see if the data get inserted. It is throwing an error. It shows incorrect syntax error. So intentionally or purposefully I made this mistake here. Look here, what is the problem here? This John and the comma were underlined with red color. That means there is some syntax error. So see, here we have comma, and here also we have comma, but we have mentioned additional comma here. Okay, you just remove one comma here, And then look here we don't have any comma at all. We need to specify comma for each and every value. But okay, here already, yes, instead of specifying the comma here, the comma is available here, and for this the comma is available here, and for this the comma is available in the subsequent line. And if you see here, employee ID is comma, employee name comma, date of birth comma, salary comma, values. Now everything seems to be good, but still underline is there, and we will just go and execute it and see what. So invalid column name John. Here the employee ID values 1001 is the employee ID, and then John is okay. You need to specify single quote, it seems. Yes, you need to specify single quote here, okay. And here you need to specify any text value, you need to enclose it by single quote, okay. Start with a single quote and end with a single quote for the text values. John is a text, it is not a numeric value. Similarly, this is a date data type. Though it is a date data type, since we have used hyphen here, it is considered as a text and comma comma. And since we defined this column date of birth as date data type, though you specify text value, it will get converted as a date data type, okay. We just select everything, click on it, execute. Yeah, completion time. So we don't see any error here. Now what I am going to do is, I just wanted to go and select the values, because we inserted one record into the employee table. We want to check whether it has loaded, right. It has one record which we loaded it, isn't it? So look here, this is the one we inserted it. So this record is visible here, John, right. So all this. So now what I do is, I just go and put everything in a single script, so that you can refer it back a later point in time. Okay, the other script, somehow I closed it. It is always a good practice, try to keep everything in a single script file. So this is the one, select top employee ID. So as soon as you create the table, you just check it. Obviously there will not be any records, but still you just check it out, and after you insert it, you just select the records from the table, okay. So whether this record got inserted in the table or not, right. So you just click on this, look here. So one record, the John record, got inserted successfully. Okay, next we will dive into the data type. So I showed you how to specify the data type. We have seen the data types that we defined it for employee ID, right. So all the things. And what we will do is first understand what is what are the different data types that are available in Microsoft SQL Server. So before we understand the different types of data types, let's first see or understand what is data type. It is nothing but the type of data that a variable can store. For example, I have a variable called quantity. So what value we can store it? We can store only the numeric values. A quantity can be 10 or 8 or something like that, right? So these are all numeric value. The quantity is a numeric variable, and also it is a whole number. So 10 is our integer whole number, 8 is also whole number, since it doesn't have any decimal value here. It is a whole number. So in SQL Server, to define a data type for this numeric variable quantity, we have something called int. So numeric quantity variable, in this case is a whole number. Since it's a whole number, we specify the data type as int. Alright. So when it comes to SQL Server, there are plenty of data types are available. It is quite overwhelming compared to Power BI and other RDBMS software. Numeric data type is available, string data type is available, date and time, and binary data type is available, and other data types is also available. Now let us take a look at the numeric data types first. So in the numeric data types, there are two different classes. Other one is integer data type, other one is decimal data type. So this is very common in almost all the programming language, even the other RDBMS software. But when it comes to a SQL server, within this integer category itself, you can see big int, small int, tiny int, bit. There are 5 different integer data types are available. Similarly, in the case of decimal data type, so you can see 4 different classes are available within this decimal data type. So do you have some decimal, money, small money, numeric? So that's why I said it's quite overwhelming. A lot of data types are available. For example, now the question is when should I use big int, when should I use int, when should I use tiny int and bit? So it depends on the requirement. It depends on the requirement, you can choose the appropriate data types to store the data in an optimal way. For example, let's say in a family, number of children in a family, you can simply go for tiny int. This is more than sufficient because nowadays no one could have more than 200 children, right? Maximum 255 you can specify it as for a tiny int. This is more than sufficient. But tiny int is not sufficient for storing. Let's say in the case of number of stories in a building, right? So your building can have more than 255 stories. In that case, you cannot store it. You cannot define tiny int for the number of stories, number of floors in a building, right? So stories. So more than 255, right? More than 255 floors can also be there in a building. So the tiny int, you can store up to 255. Beyond that, you cannot. In that case, you cannot use tiny int. You can probably use big int based on your requirement, based on the type of value that you store it in your table. You can decide which data type you can use it. So these are the different categories of data types that are available at a high level, or the the important data types that are available under these 3 categories. So number data type, so int, big, bit data type and decimal data type. So we already discussed about int. Int is the whole number and bit is 0, 1. It takes only one value. Either you can store 0 or 1. So now the question is, what kind of scenario can I use bit data type? For example, you have a column by the name of sex. If it is a female, use 0. If it is a male, use 1. In this case, the sex column can take either 0 or 1. So in that kind of situation, you can use bit, and the decimal can take the values anywhere between these two. You can store any values between minus 10 to the power 3, 8 plus 1 to this one. This is the lower limit to the upper limit. And similarly, the int, right? You can store any value between these two ranges. So these big numbers you can store it here. And the next one is the date time. So date time you can store anywhere from Jan 1st to 53 to 1753 to till 4 nines, December 31 4 nines. And the next one is string. String is a text data type. So in SQL Server, instead of saying string, the data type name is Char and Varchar is there. So the Char data type can store maximum, using which you can store up to 8,000 characters. In Varchar also maximum length is 8,000 characters. So now the question is, using both Char and Varchar data type, you can store the text data type or the string data type. Then what is the difference between these two? The Char and Varchar. Supposing you have a column by the name of region, right? So in the region, let's say you operate business across different regions, something like a north region, south region, and east region, and you have something called northeast region. So northeast, how many letters are there here? 2, 4, 6, 8, 9 letters. So for region, you can define the data type as char, and then you can specify the width as 9 here, so that you can store the maximum 9 here. For the region column, you can define the data type as char and the width as 9 here. Now the question is, instead of char, can't I use varchar? Yes, you can use varchar also. Then what is the difference between char and varchar data type? So we call it a character, and since we store the character data type, right? So char and var character data type. So what is the difference between these two? So if you, I just give you an example for this. For char is a fixed one, fixed length. So that's why they mentioned fixed length Unicode char, and this is not a fixed one, Varchar. Supposing, let's say, the region, so in this case north, right? North and south is, in this case, only 5 letters are there, here 5 letters are there, here 4 letters are there. Even though for north region only, for this text only 5 letters are there, 5 letters and 4 letters are there, it pre-allocates 9 cells, right? So 9 in the memory. Okay, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. Okay. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. So when it comes to northeast, so the N, O, R, T, it's each cell, you just assume that it gets stored something like this. But when it comes to east, for the character data type, it will store E, A, S, T, and the remaining cells will get it will get used for east. Okay, it is pre-allocated. The space is pre-allocated. It is something like you hired a hall, right? Whether you use it or not, the entire hall you will have to pay the money, something like this. This is a simple analogy. With that you can relate it. Whereas when it comes to varchar data type is pretty straightforward, and it is smart one. For northeast, it requires 9 digits to store it in the memory or in the storage. Okay, it will allocate this one. When it comes to east, it smartly allocate only the 4. It uses only the 4 letters, and rest of them it will release it, so that this space can be used to store other region data. So the varchar is dynamic, whereas char is static. Once you create it, that's all. Whether you use it or not, still it is pre-allocated. So 9. The width 9, right? So 9 cells, right, will be pre-allocated. It will not be used by other, right? But when it comes to varchar, whatever the size, that's why they call it a variable character. So it varies, right? The character data type will get variable length. So in this case, if it is a east, it will allocate only the 4. If it is a north, only 5. The rest of them it will release it. It will not consume it. It will not pre-allocate it. That is the difference between varchar and character. And the next one is binary. The binary data type, we use it to store the image related data. So in that kind of situation, you can go for binary data type. Next, we will take a look at the built-in types that are supported or available as part of the numeric data type. This is just the tip of the iceberg. If you take a look at the manual, Microsoft SQL Server, a lot of built-in functions are available. These are the most frequently used and the popular built-in functions, which you should be aware of it. So here you can see ceiling, as the name suggests, ceiling and floor. So in a building, we have a ceiling and floor, isn't it? So what this ceiling does is, it returns the largest, it returns the largest integer value that is equal to or less than a value. For example, I have a value by the name of 17.53. If I use a function ceiling, right, ceiling of 17.53, what it gives me is then the next highest integer value 18. The floor, there is a function called floor. When I say function, remember that, or whenever you hear the term function, you just understand that the function name followed by the open parenthesis and closed parenthesis should be there. That which means it is a function, but it is a built-in functions. We have different types of built-in function, user-defined function. I'm talking about built-in functions. Floor is a built-in function. Since I mentioned function, the function, right? The function name should followed with the open parenthesis and closed parenthesis. This is called parenthesis. I'm going to specify the same value, 17.53. In the case of ceiling, it returns the largest integer value, that is either right, it is equal to or greater than this one. Okay, sorry, in the case of ceiling, it returns the smallest integer value that is greater than or equal to this number. So in this case, greater than or equal, so it is not equal, it is greater than this one, the greater value. In simple term, right, the ceiling will rounds up to the nearest integer value, next nearest integer value, and this one, the floor, will give you just 17 only. In the case of say, right, so it gives only the 17, which means the floor, what it does is on the left side of your decimal, right, so it simply it returns this value. To test this, we will go and use we will do it in SQL Server. How do I test it? Select. So it is always a best practice, you specify the keywords in caps letter. It is not, though it is not mandatory, but it is a best practice. Always use the keywords in the caps letter. The select is the keyword, which means it's a reserved word. Okay. The reserved word can be understood only by the SQL Server. Okay. The next one is the ceiling function. Ceiling is also a reserved word. It's a function, built-in function. Look here, you don't have to type the entire function name. Just you type CER. First two letters or one letter. It automatically displays the drop-down list and it displays all the built-in functions that starts with C or CE, right? So ceiling. In this case, you just click on it. You don't have to type the entire function name by hand. So 17.53, and I just close the parenthesis because ceiling is a built-in function. It's a function, hence you need to use the open parenthesis and closed parenthesis. Okay, and I'm going to say as something like a ceiling value. You can specify whatever name that you want. This is not a reserved word. Ceiling value is not a reserved word. The as is a reserved word or the keyword, and select is also keyword, and ceiling is a built-in function, hence I mentioned it in a caps letter. Now let us select all these things and press F5 to execute this one. It returns 18. As I mentioned here, it rounds up to the nearest integer value, right? So next nearest integer value is 18. I mentioned integer, okay? The next nearest integer is 18. The next one is, let us specify the floor. Instead of ceiling, we will use the floor. And I select everything, click on execute. Look here, it displays only 17 here, right? So it is displaying only or returning the smallest integer, right? It is returning the smallest integer value. The smallest is 17.53, right? So the smallest integer in this is 17. So the left side of, in simple term, it rounds it rounds down to the left side of this one, so 17, right? Simply left side of your decimal. Okay, this is your decimal, the left side of decimal is this one. It simply rounds down here. In the case of ceiling, in the case this is not ceiling value, this is a floor value. What is as? As is alias name. It's alias, like people have some alias name. It's likewise, let's some person name is very bigger one. Instead of using a bigger name to call him, we use some alias, Babu, a short name, right? Similarly, here we use as a keyword to define the alias name. So this is whatever you specified followed by as is a alias name, ceiling value followed. But if I don't give this one, what will happen? I just remove this, and if I simply select and click on it, it will execute, but it will not show anything, no column name. It doesn't, right? It doesn't look good. So what you do is you give some alias name here, and if you specify this, right, it will give some meaningful column name here. Similarly, what you do is you try all these functions, but some max main you need to have some tables. So we have already created the table. Anyhow, before we go in there, so I just simply copy paste this one. Now we will use a round function. We will see how the round function works. Let's use the same value here as round. So in the case of round, you have something like 0. Okay, the first argument is your whatever value you want to round it is specified here. The next one is the number of digits that you want to round it off. That is what you need to specify here. So in SQL Server, here you can specify either 0 or 1. Okay, if I specify 0, what will happen is it rounds up to the next integer value. The next integer value is 18. It is same as ceiling, isn't it? And we have another, instead of specifying 0, you can specify 1 here. If I specify, what will happen is, look here, so in this case, okay, let me use, before I go here, let me do one thing. 17 point, let us use the first. See, here there are two arguments. You need to specify two arguments for round function. The first argument is whatever the value that you want to round it off, you specify it here as it is. And the next second argument followed by comma, you need to specify the second argument. The second argument, in this case 0, either you can specify 0 or 1, but if I specify 0, it rounds to the next integer value. When I specify the same 0 for this one, it is not rounding to the next integer value. It rounds only the value that are left to this decimal value, same as floor. So now you tell me how, why for this 17.53 it rounds to the next integer value, and why it is not rounding to the next integer value. This is a school thing, right? School time we studied this one. They round all the things, how to round the values to a next, for a specific decimal values, right? So here in this case, it is depends on this 0.5. 0.5 and above will get rounded, right? So rounded to this value will get rounded to the next one. Since here it is not 0.5 and above, hence it is returning the smallest integer value in this case, which is 17. So hope you understood the round. So now let us try the same thing with the 1. Instead of 0, the second argument, I'm going to replace the second argument 0 as 1 here, and here also I'm going to specify 1 here. And if I select this one and if I click on it, we can compare these two things together, right? The output 17.53 comma 1. So what happened in this case, it became 17.50, and in this case it became 17 here. Let me do one thing. I just specify go here. These two queries are part of a batch, and these two queries are part of the other batch, because all these queries are part of this go, isn't it? You just think that way. All the queries will get sent to your SQL server as a batch, single batch. But these two queries will be sent now. So we want to send only these two queries. You can see 17.50 and 17 here. So earlier we saw, or what we will do is, for our understanding, I just select everything. I'll put these round related functions in a single batch, so that we can compare the output side by side. See, 17.53 got rounded to the next integer value 18, and this one 17, and in this case the same thing, but the second argument, when I mentioned 1, it rounded only this decimal value 0.53. 0.53 now became 0.50. Similarly, here in this case, since it is 0.53, right? So 0.53 becomes 0.50, because for example if I say 0.55 here, I just execute it one more time. See, since you have 0.55, right, it this decimal gets rounded off to the next highest value 0.60, right? Since you are specifying 1, right, so the 60, and this one 17.03 comma 1. So what happens is, in this, since it is not above, or it is not 0.5 and above, what happens is simply returns this value. Hope you understood the difference in zeros. When you use 0 argument, what happens? When you use 1, what happens? When you use 0, it rounds up to the next integer value, whereas here it is not rounds up to the next integer value. Instead, it rounds up the decimal value, or to the next decimal value, right? So 0.5 and above. So that is how it does this one. Hope you understood round function and ceil function, and sum and quantity. Next one is sum, exp, max, min, and all is there. What we do is, for this we need to have some table data. What I am going to do is select sum of quantity. We have something called quantity column, that is part of my sum is available this sales fact, right? In sales fact, there is a column called quantity that is available as part of the sales fact table. So I'm going to use sum of quantity from sales fact table. I just go to the sales fact and see the columns. Here the quantity is, so look here, the quantity, when you imported the file from Excel to table, the quantity column was consists of Varchar. You need to check, right, after you import the data from the Excel to table, make sure that the data type whatever mentioned it correctly here or not. Okay, so in this case, wrongly it mentioned, it considers a n Varchar 255. Okay, so Varchar, Varchar and Char are text related data. Even nchar also related text data type. Somehow, right, while you imported the data from Excel to SQL database, SQL Server database, it considered the data type for quantity as n Varchar. This is also kind of a text data type. At this moment, let us ignore this one. Yes, this requires some kind of treatment. At this moment, let us ignore this one. The next one is, we'll go and see the sales amount. Look here, I just typed sales. It automatically displays the column names or table that start with the sales. So we need the sales amount here. This is called code completion facility. You don't have to type the entire column name or table name. Automatically it displays it, so that you can simply say, look, yes, sum of sales amount. Okay, so next what I do is, I just write edit top 200 rows. If you go here, you can see the. Okay, now the question is, it wrongly assigned the character or text data type quantity variable. Quantity is supposed to be numeric data type or decimal data type, right? So sorry, the whole integer, right? A whole number. It is supposed to be integer. So what we do is, you click over this table. On the right side, you will find edit top 100 rows. Instead, what we do is, we will, okay, I just select this one. Okay, instead of this, what you do is, you just click on the column, for which you need to modify the data type. You just go and say int. You have something called int data type. That's all. Okay, and then simply, let's say, that's all, right? So now if you click on it here, one second, here I made changes. So you need to click on yes and save as text file. just say something like something like this. Save changes not permanent changes you made required the following tables to be drawn or recreated. Okay, you cannot change it. So anyhow, at this moment, right, so we have I'll explain you how to do this one later. Okay, at this moment you understand how to use sum on the sales amount. Okay, let us go by the sales amount column and then sum of sales amount. Similarly, you can use the total sales we made in this table, right? It will count. We have a column called sales amount. The sales amount, what is the total sales? That is what it shows, right? It sums the entire 93 records. So in sales fact, we already seen how many number of records, right? I'll just type it here to how to check the number of records from a table. Total number of records in a table. So for that we use something called select. So we can use the aggregation function, the count, sum, min, max. These are all aggregation, which is also called as a summarization functions. Count of star, we use some count of star from the sales fact table. This one will tell us, or this one will give us how many number of records are there in a table. Look here, 92 records are in a table, and the sum function will give me the total number of sales for the 92 records. Okay, that is what it tells us. And the next one is we have something else called minimum, right? What the minimum sale we made and maximum. Similarly, you can try min, max for other things. Okay, I just click on execute. 60. So all these things are available. I'll share this script to you, and what you do is you can probably try other built-in functions. Use numeric around ABS. ABS is nothing but the absolute values. Even ABS you studied during college time, right? So absolute value, it will return absolute value. Supposing you have a value called -8. If you take the absolute function, absolute of -8, this one will return 8, positive value. Okay, the absolute function. Power will square the value. You can take the exponential also, exp function for any given value.